Hola, my friends. Hello, hello, welcome. Here we are. Just chat with Matt. I'm just cleaning my glasses because I realised I couldn't freaking see much. Yeah, I'm in Ecuador. I'm in the Amazon. I'm in the Napa Valley, I guess. Napa River, part of the Amazon jungle. Reasonably high up in the headwaters, obviously, of the Amazon basin here in Ecuador. I've got no idea what the date is. It's the 20-something of October. And here we are. It's an hour earlier than we would normally do chat with Matt because I've got something on in an hour's time. So hopefully I managed to get myself into the right group. I'm just having a doubt about that. But anyway, I will continue and hopefully things will work out. A little bit of construction noise coming from over the thing. They're building a couple of new lodges here in our retreat venue. So this is not a retreat venue, but it's where we're retreating. There's a big lagoon there that apparently has some caiman in. Not that we've seen those. Hey Jill. And I'm upstairs in the bar. There's not many people around today because most people are out doing different excursions. We did a big day's excursion yesterday. Went to an animal refuge and a local village for lunch, and then saw how the locals are making pottery and stuff. We're cruising around in a canoe, a big-ish canoe, with about 10 of us. Well, no, there was only 4 of us on the trip, but yeah, a few guides and whatnot, with an outboard motor, so we weren't paddling canoe. Just as well, the river flows really fast, eh? Anywho, here we are, in the jungle. What have I been thinking about lately? Hi Matt, I've found you, so guess you're on the right site. Yeah, perfect, thanks Jill. I did relax when I saw your name. I thought, right, I'm probably in the right place, or right enough anyway. Yeah, so the jungle, it's pretty awesome. Everything's alive, everything's moving, everything's vibrant. It's really a great place to remind yourself. Well, for me, I guess the experience is one of, it really helps you to stay very present when you're in new environments, especially new environments that have the potential to be hazardous, or at least painful. I guess that's what a hazard is, right? Something that could inflict pain and or death. But yeah, we've done a couple of guided tours through the rainforest, one at night, one during the day and stuff, and the guide pointing out, this plant's, don't touch that one, that will give you a nasty rash, be careful of this, watch out, there's insects, there's ants running up this tree here, don't put your hand on that, because if they get on you, they're called bullet ants, not bull ants like we call bull ants at home, but these are called bullet ants, because apparently if you get bitten it feels like you've been shot. And the pain is likely to last anywhere between sort of 6 to 8 hours to 24 hours, including, throwing up with fevers and the whole thing. So it doesn't sound particularly pleasant. So I've gone out on my own, of course, several times since I recorded a meditation, part of my group offering out there at night on my own in the jungle. Needless to say, it helps you to stay very present when you're conscious about not touching this, not getting bitten by that, watching where you walk, etc., right? Lots of different snakes and spiders and various insects, millipedes, centipedes, crickets, even the stick insects here. If you touch the stick insects, they spray a toxin out of their back end, out of their abdomen, that is very irritating. It's like an acid, it burns your skin. So even the lowly little stick insects and a lot of the frogs are very toxic on their skin as well. So yeah, it really forces you to be present, which I love a lot. I think traveling in general does that. When you're in unfamiliar, anything that's unfamiliar helps us to stay much more aware of the present moment, because when we're in what would you call it, routine environments that we've become very habituated to, we tend to go onto autopilot. We tend to know what's going to happen. It's like when you're driving to work, the same route you've driven to work every day for decades potentially. You get to, like I remember when I was driving in and out of Wellington, I'd get to work some days and I go, oh, I'm here. It's like I don't remember the trip. So where was I? I was in in my mind quite often doing mantra. At one stage I was chanting light language when I was, practicing that art, or they were sort of practicing developing my ability to make, to basically speak that fast and pronounce sounds the way they wanted them. So we'd practice repetition of different sounds as I drove, which I don't recommend people do, right? I don't recommend you listen to my light language. I don't recommend people try and do light language while they're driving, but for me it seemed to be fine. Susie said, just saw Marie's post, pretty full on but incredible. Exactly. And we are definitely in the tropics. It's hot here. It's really hot and quite oppressive, the heat, high humidity. Don't mind that, just got bitten a little bit by something. A lot of the things sting you, but it doesn't seem to be too bad. So not every, thing is a disaster. What was I about to say? Oh yeah, there's very little breeze and high humidity, and when the sun is out like it is now, it is quite hot. Like, I don't know, it's probably high 30s, but oh yeah, this is my gecko shirt. This is from Bali a few years ago. It's a bit tatty now. It's just a bit of a beach pool type shirt. It's not go to dinner shirt, but it's a good one to wear when you know you're just going to get filthy sweaty. Yeah, that's geckos, so we like that. The geckos here aren't very big, interestingly. They do have geckos, but they're not very big. So you still get the same sound in your bedroom. Those of us who, are used to Asian geckos know what that sound is, that gecko in the middle of the night. But they're only little guys. So that's unusual. We were expecting to see big ones, but apparently not. So, yeah, what was I saying? The benefit of getting out of your comfort zone, the benefit of travelling. You don't even have to travel, but the benefit of doing things differently helps you to be more present, which I think is awesome, because you truly have experiences when you're more present, as opposed to being on autopilot where life is basically just slipping you by. Not that that's wrong all of the time. I think it's fine to have, time in your head, imagining the future or doing whatever, right? Having time out from reality. I don't think that's quote unquote a bad thing, as long as you don't spend all of your time there, or quote unquote the majority of your time there, because all is a pretty farcical concept. I am going to talk. Remind me, someone I'm going to talk. Jen Burns asked, "What are your comments on radical self-responsibility?" So I'm going to talk about that. It kind of leads into what I'm been contemplating myself. This idea of being in different environments where you are not so sure of what's going on, and what's dangerous, what's not. So you have to be more present and more careful. I had a bit of a thought about careful the other day when someone said, "Oh, be careful," and I thought, yeah, I am full of care, but I'm not concerned. Right? Isn't it interesting how the word careful in our society, which basically means full of care, which is a beautiful thing to do, has more of a connotation of be cautious, or even be scared. Oh, be careful! Don't fall. Be careful. It's like be cautious, be worried. And really, the word careful shouldn't really mean that. It should mean be full of care for what you're doing, right? Be present, be heartfelt with what you're doing, be intentional that what you're doing it in a caring way, that you care about the outcome, that you care about the people involved in the outcome, as opposed to be careful, be worried, not be careful, be concerned or cautious. Sister Jill said very autumn will do, autumnal here in the UK with showers and no sun, temperature around 14 degrees, but did have a glorious weekend, and I went for a lovely long walk. Got to see a porpoise and a dolphin. What's the difference between a porpoise and a dolphin? Playing off the headland in the fishing boat lane. It feels wonderful. Awesome, yeah, change of temperatures. We've been having that at home in New Zealand. We've had a pretty consistent sort of 14 degree days for a long time, which was getting a bit boring. Hopefully summer is coming. Not that we'll be home until mid-December or early December. So anyway, yeah, I think it's a good practice to practice being careful without being overly concerned, and that's one of the things that we get to do when we travel, or even if you put yourself in any sort of new situation. It is quote unquote challenging, difficult sometimes to get out of our comfort zone and do new things, because doing habitual things is very predictable for the mind, which we love. Awesome. Susie's getting warmer temperatures in Auckland, at least 2021. So yeah, it's definitely a practice that I enjoy, even though I find traveling a little bit challenging personally, but I do enjoy the opportunity to get out, and I love being in nature. And you know, when you're in the rainforest, even though it's like high 30s when I'm out in the rainforest on my own, especially long pants with this with your t-shirt tucked in and a jersey over the top of that, long sleeve over the top of that, and your socks and your pants tucked into your socks, etc. Because you don't want anything going up your you don't want anything getting to any exposed skin that you can hope. So definitely cautious in many respects. You always get good cues from the locals when you see that the local guides and stuff all get around in long pants with gumboots when they're walking in the forest. You get the idea, right? It's better to be a little safer than sorry, because most of them, you know, have been bitten by a lot of these things at one stage or another. So they talk from first hand when they talk about the experience of why you don't want to get bitten by some of these things, or stung, whatever you want to call it. Which brings me around to what Jill said, porpoises was darker colour and didn't jump so much. Oh, okay. We don't seem to have that differential in Australia and New Zealand anyway. They're all various sorts of dolphins. I don't think any of them are called a porpoise. But I had always wondered that. I'll have to, maybe when we have some internet a bit better than what we've got currently, I'll Google it. Radical self-responsibility, Jen asked about. What are my thoughts on it? It's an interesting concept, the idea of it being radical to take self-responsibility, but I get what she means. Being self-responsible beyond what is considered normal for self-responsibility. I think in general our society has watered down self-responsibility a lot over the last 100 years or so. We are very, very quick to want to be able to, especially in certain cultures like America, blame someone, sue someone if something goes wrong to us. If we slip down the stairs, then obviously there was something wrong with the stairs, right? The handrail wasn't right, or there wasn't no slip tread on the stairs. Something was wrong, right? We're going to sue someone because we've slipped down the stairs. We're not prepared to take responsibility that perhaps we weren't concentrating, or we weren't wearing the correct shoes, or something, right? Or a freak accident. We want to be able to blame someone else, and this concept has become chronic, and we've become very quick to talk about the responsibility of the concept of accountability for people who are responsible for things, but we're very slow to talk about this idea of taking accountability for ourselves. As opposed to taking accountability for others' perception of what we've done. Ultimately, we're all responsible for our own experience here on this plane, on this planet, spiritually speaking, right? Self-responsibility is synonymous, basically, with spirituality, in my opinion. If you're expecting or thinking that you're not responsible for your situation, then you're basically playing the victim. And I know some people, you know, will draw lines there about, you know, what we should expect others to do and what we have control over, etc. But ultimately, we don't have control over everything, but we definitely have an influence over everything that we experience in some way or form or another, talking from an energetic point of view, right? And I know it gets difficult, and I know if you start talking about this, some people will think it's being toxically spiritual, this idea that, well, you created that, therefore, you know, other people are allowed to get away with treating you badly, abusing you, etc., right? So trying to find these lines and these concepts can be difficult for us as humans to find this ability to take responsibility for our experience and to still hold others accountable as well, and to still maintain boundaries and all of these things. It's not one or the other, right? There is a lot of grey lines in this idea. But ultimately, self-responsibility is synonymous with empowerment, right? When you start taking more responsibility for the experience that you are having, you empower yourself to change your experiences, to improve your experiences, to transform your experiences in your life and your experience of life here on this planet. As long as you're not willing to take responsibility and want to blame others, the authorities or other people in your life, bad luck, God, if you're blaming God for the experience you're having, etc., you're disempowering yourself, right? You are basically becoming fatalistic in the concept of destiny or luck or victimhood, etc. So ultimately, to live a very empowered life, it requires us to take responsibility, and that can be difficult. Jill said, when I was doing geological work in New South Wales interior with redback spiders and various snakes in South Carolina in a region of something heads and rattlesnakes, it was definitely long denim trousers, walking boots and thick socks or gaiters. I never got used to it. Yeah, it can be difficult. I grew up with snakes in Australia, so I was never particularly worried about them, and I'm still not particularly worried about snakes. I'm more worried about ants than snakes, to be completely honest. But, I don't go tearing off through the undergrowth in the Amazon in a pair of jandals either. So, it's a matter of maintaining mindfulness and awareness and observing where you're walking. That's important, right? I think that's, and again, it's our responsibility. We can't expect someone else to come and clear the snakes away for us. But do we really want to live in a world that has become devoid of all hazards? We've seen what we've done to the playgrounds for our kids, and the amount of sterilisation we've done, both around bacteriums and all hazards. This is where our society's going, and our population's getting weaker and weaker and weaker in all regards, right, mentally and biologically, because we're not associating or when you're socializing ourselves to various hazards, and therefore people get more and more complacent, and then bad things happen because we're not practicing the art of self-responsibility and not practicing dealing with hazards in general. We're seeing this societal wide, especially in the West, as opposed to here, where the kids are all running around barefoot. We've been in the local villages and they're all running around barefoot. And one of the local remedies for keeping the kids healthy is eating this grub that comes from a beetle larvae that grows in a palm tree. And they swear by this is really good for flu symptoms and coughs, and one of the reasons they reckon why no one here got COVID, basically the pandemic came through and no one here in this region of the upper Amazon, whatever you want to call it, the Napa region here, apparently no one got COVID because they're very well socialized to bacteria and stuff, and they eat these grubs and whatnot. Anywho's, the more that we and we know this, right? The more that we've used antibiotics over the last 100 years, the more and more problems we're having with bacteria in hospitals now. Superbugs, etc., that they can't treat with anything. Although I think they're swinging back around and coming back to things like colloidal silver and stuff. Yeah, jellyfish got you in south of Perth. Yeah, jellyfish stings are not very pleasant either. But again, you live through these things, and there are ways around it. Anywho's, self-responsibility, radical self-responsibility. I think I dance with this term radical. It's an interesting idea. What is radical self-responsibility and what's normal self-responsibility? I think that's just a matter of where your line in the sand is, where your threshold is. The concept of becoming radically self-responsible is, just being willing to take a quantum step or a leap towards a new iteration of responsibility. Ultimately, I think most gains happen for all of us slowly but surely, rather than radical steps. I think radical steps have their place. They're very good for waking us up. They're a very good way of exploring new concepts, to take a radical step into something. But ultimately, I think whenever we take a radical step towards something, we always have to come back and retest where we stepped from. So quite often, I think we see when people make a radical change in their lives, there tends to be a regression that happens after that radical step, which is not wrong. It's not that they failed, it's not that they're falling back. It's that you need to fill in some of the gap. If I was talking in stock trading terms, right, when it gaps up, it quite often comes back to what they call fill in the wick, to fill in the gap in where price hasn't been yet, or hasn't set a foundation. And foundations are important. As a builder, we talk a lot about foundations and getting your foundations right. And it's the same with making any transformational progress. We need to set good foundations. So radical transformation is not wrong, but we usually expect, or it would be prudent to expect, that we're going to have to fill in some of that radical step at some stage, and that can be a little bit disconcerting. When you've chosen to make a quantum step into a new expression of yourself, a new iteration, taking radical self-responsibility for yourself, then you will find over time you have to regress a little to fill in some of that foundation, so that you can make that radical step more sustainable for yourself longer term. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're prepared and have an awareness around that, and don't feel that you've failed as you start to slide backwards and then throw the baby out with the bathwater and or beat yourself up and lose self-worth, etc. over that. Yeah, exactly. Jill said, is it radical if you just happen to be the first person to do something? Of course, radicals are anyone who is beyond normal, really. And normal is set by, the bell curve. It's the center section of the bell curve, right? It's the average where the majority of the population sits, and then we have the outliers on either edge of the bell curve, which are the radicals, whether they're radical left or radical right. They're just outside of what is considered normal, which is just based on the inertia, really, of the general population. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being radical in a societal sense. I think many of us are radical in societal sense. But we can also make radical steps for ourselves, which is stepping beyond what is normal for us, or what is comfortable for us, or what has become habituated for us. And I think that's good to do that, but also beneficial to recognize that generally most sustainable change happens with stronger foundations. So it has to be a little bit more slow, and not necessarily taking everything slow, but being willing to go ahead and then slip back a little, go ahead, then slip back a bit. That's generally how we create foundations, in terms of our energetic capacity to be more able to change, right? I think this is generally what we're all here to do, is to stretch ourselves so that we can all cope with what was considered maybe before too stressful or overwhelming, to develop resilience requires us to stretch ourselves, to get out of our comfort zones. But of course, we have to be mindful about how far of our comfort zone we can have before we have a catastrophic failure, a bigger meltdown that may set us back because we shake our confidence too much. So everything has to happen at a pace that is beneficial for us. And I don't think we can scientifically quantify that. This is very situational for each and every one of us. And ultimately what helps is if we're willing to follow our heart, if we're willing to keep adjusting, adapting, accommodating as we make progress, right? Willing to, scale things back or ramp things up according to how we're feeling intuitionally. Is that the right word? Intuitively, that's the word I'm looking for. How we're feeling intuitively rather than how we're feeling emotionally. But, of course, how we're feeling emotionally is also important to consider. I'm just going to see how long I've been on for, 25 minutes. Yeah, so thanks for that, Jen Burns. Radical not self-acceptance, but that's important too. Radical self-responsibility, I think is where we're all going. I think it's time to let go of wanting to blame other people. But at the same time, that doesn't mean letting other people abuse us, right? It doesn't mean that just because we're not wanting to blame them that we make what they're doing as right. Might not be quote unquote right, might not be beneficial, might not be useful for us to allow it to continue, but we don't need to make it wrong either, and we don't need to blame them. We don't need to use them as an excuse as to why we are not happy, we're not thriving, we're not being our best selves because of this, because of the government, because of the climate. Are we willing to sit at home and mope about the climate that we're experiencing, or do we change something, either our perception of the climate or our location? We can change. We don't have to be the victim of anything, really. This is taking responsibility, right, for ourselves, taking responsibility for our perception of our experience, which is important. That's all that really matters. Think your calendar. Calendar's telling me chat with Matt's coming up in half an hour, but I did it early because I've actually got a chocolate making excursion happening. Here in Ecuador, they have three main agricultural products, the three biggest products: bananas, which we eat in New Zealand, Ecuadorian bananas, cacao, very big here, and palm oil, which is a bit of a shame, but is unfortunately the scourge of the earth in many ways, scourge of the environment. But they're the three biggest things. So yeah, cacao and bananas are a big thing. So chocolate dipped bananas is very, very Ecuadorian. And of course they have many different types of bananas here than we just get as the sort of Cavendish export to New Zealand of Ecuadorian bananas. So yeah, we're going to go and watch how they prepare the cacao. It's all growing around here. There's a little farmlet just over the sort of back stream, which is where we saw that very poisonous coral snake last night in the pond back there. But yes, they're growing cacao over there, and they grow bananas on the same plot. They seem to rotate crops quite a bit. I think that's very jungle-ish type of things. Is that chocolate used for savoury like in Mexico? I haven't seen any savoury chocolate dishes yet, Jill, but we've only been here a few days, so yeah, maybe they do that idea. I know we had a savoury chocolate thing, a vegetarian version. They quite often do it with chicken, I believe. I can't remember the name of it in Mexico when we were there in 2019. Yeah, I'm not sure, but they definitely use bananas in all sorts of different ways, and plantain, which looks like a banana when it's on the thing, but is obviously much more starchy and fibrous. But they make flour out of it and do all sorts of things with it, which is rather interesting. I think there's a big bird. We've been watching all the different birds, of course. Yeah, radical acceptance and radical responsibility. Very, very good. Thank you, Susie. So yes, doing my yoga classes from in the jungle, meditations and relaxations, and having some fun. We're off to the Galapagos Islands in a couple of days. We've got one, well, we're leaving here tomorrow. We've got one day in the capital, Quito, and then we're flying to the Galapagos. So next time I talk to you, I'm not sure if I'll make it next week on Wednesday, because we'll be out on the boat, and I don't believe we're going to have any internet at all. So don't be surprised if you don't hear from me next week. Don't be concerned. I will be careful without being, well, I will be cautious as well. We'll be swimming with marine iguanas and sea lions and all sorts of awesome things. No doubt our fair share of sharks as well, because wherever there's seals there's generally sharks. But anyway, that's life, isn't it? If you're not willing to take any risks, you're not going to have any new experiences. That's life. Jill said, yep, mandarin bananas get served up with scabbard fish. Weird, but it works. Yeah, I don't know, we're not into the fish. But anyway, much love, my friends. I'm going to get off this because my time is up. I'll speak to you again soon enough. Bye for now. Bye.